What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, part of the All-City Podcast Network. We're powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, how you doing today?
Never been better, buddy.
Yeah?
Never been better.
Okay. You told me before we went live that you had an epiphany today while pumping gas, and I'm very curious what this is.
Wasn't even an epiphany. It was news.
Okay.
So I go get my car serviced this morning, and afterwards I go and I'm getting gas, and I'm sitting in my car while I'm pumping gas, scrolling through my phone, and I had one of the best moments, man, I've had in a really long time when a news item hit my phone. Okay. And that is my favorite band of all time is coming back together for one more tour in the spring of 2025. It's AC/DC.
Okay.
I've seen them like probably 10 times. And last time I saw them was 2016. I thought that would be it. In fact, Brian Johnson, the lead singer, was not even on that tour because he had something with his vocal cords. I thought he was never going to sing again. Axl Rose actually did that tour with them, and it was pretty awesome. We saw it in Philly, but the drummer wasn't there. Phil Rudd wasn't there. But Angus Young is the show. Like, he was there, the guitar player. But now they got Brian Johnson back. Angus is still there. Phil Rudd is coming back. And Ace, not only are they doing a tour, Adam, they got 13 dates.
Okay.
And one of those is in Tampa. So it's going to be 20 minutes from my house down there. And now it gets tricky because it is in the spring. So it's kind of like, NBA schedule, right?
Yeah.
Could impact me. But my wife already, man, she already went on there. There's a pre-sale was today, and there's pretty much all these sites are almost selling out today. She grabbed 2 already as a birthday present for me, which is coming up there after Christmas. So I'm just, dude, I'm ecstatic. I'm giddy right now. I'm giddy.
I like the comments. Leg is thunderstruck with this news.
And it was literally, I thought it was just over. In fact, this is a true story. I walk in the house. My wife did not know about any of this. I told her when I got into the house, and she got these tickets before we came on the show. She immediately went on there and scooped up to, knowing how important this is to me. But guess what? My 3-year-old, when I walked in, was wearing an AC/DC t-shirt. And she put that on him this morning without knowing what was coming down the pike.
There you go. There you go. I can't believe it. The excitement in your voice and in your eyes.
You have no idea what this band means to me, brother. So anyway, I'm sorry for all the hoop heads. I know, we're cutting into the basketball talk, but it's a pretty big day in this household.
Very excited. Legs was very excited for this news, by the way. So excited he didn't want to tell me before we went live. He's like, I want it live on the air. So there you go. Shouts to you and your spring concert. Go Phil Young again. We're going to talk about the NBA Cup today. It's always fun on the last day of the NBA Cup. Today's the last day. There's like 12 teams who are waiting to see what happens tonight, to see if they advance to the final round. And we're going to try to break down all the scenarios and preview that. We're also going to talk about ESPN made a list of the top 25 players under 25. That list is hard to do, so we came up with our own list. We're going to share ours and discuss, who we think or who are really buying long-term under 25. But we're going to start with the game last night. We're not even going to go deep on this game. We're really going to talk more storylines. The Timberwolves win, blow out the Lakers 109-80. Just 80 points for the Lakers in this game. The Timberwolves get right. They needed to kind of have a nice little feel-good win. They get that here against the Lakers, but the Lakers struggle and LeBron struggles. He has just 10 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assist legs, 4 of 16 shooting. And do you know what they did? They kept him in that game really long to make sure he could get to his double digits so he could maintain that double-digit scoring average. Kind of shameful. But more importantly, he's struggling right now. He has not been good over his last 6 games. He's only cracked 20 points once in that span. So what's going on with LeBron and what's going on with the Lakers?
Man, you mentioned it. First of all, okay, so you're talking about a stretch 5 out of 6 games under 20. And I
That's
called
weird.
that game against Oklahoma City last Friday, and I noticed it that night that it just was not the normal amount of juice that you see out of LeBron James. And the guy's pushing 40, right? If I'm not mistaken, he turns 40 this month, right? At the end of the month.
End of December, yep.
Yeah, so he turns 40 at the end of the month. So look, I mean, he's obviously not normal. We know that, but at the same time, we're judging him based on what we're seeing in real time, not like what his age says he should look like, because he has set the bar there. But now, and I don't know if this is all because of that, but there's something with him right now with he just doesn't have it. At the end of that game against Oklahoma City, the game was still winnable. 1 possession game, like 90 seconds left, and there was some like missed shots, a bad turnover, like late in that game. And, one of those plays, like he didn't necessarily bust it back on defense. And, I was just kind of watching it like, wow, I mean, this is like now at that point, that was his 4th straight game under 20. He then came back against Utah and they barely win that game. They win that game because those guys are really good late, or that's another loss.
Yeah.
They win that game by one of the worst teams in the league. And then he comes right back against Minnesota and gives them 10 points on 4 for 16. And more importantly, Adam, we're now up to 19 straight threes missed. And we were lauding him for the beginning of the season. You remember his percentages from the 3, career best percentages. At one point, he was approaching 50% from the 3-point line with a pretty good sample size to start the year. He's come all the way down now. I believe he's certainly under 40. He's down now to 34.5%. That's how far it has dropped. I mean, it's dropped like 14, 15 percentage points in like 10 days. So now you look at it and go, okay, wow, now we're back to that shot being favorable to the defense to force him to take. And that wasn't really the case earlier in the year. And he was in some big ones late. So LeBron is the main story here, but the Lakers team also. Some of the comments after, just talking about how bad their offense has been. LeBron's exact word last night to use for the offense was nasty. Our offense is nasty right now, and not in a good way. Nasty can be a compliment on a dunk. Yeah. It's not a compliment when you're talking about their offense. So there's a lot going on with the Lakers team right now, and you really wondered where this was going to go last night. And Minnesota, they've got their own issues. They're not even a team that came in red hot. Like this isn't all of a sudden you're struggling and you get the Celtics or you get the Cavaliers who are red hot or you get a red hot Houston, whatever. This is Minnesota, who's a 500 team for all intents and purposes. And you get shut out like that. 80 points, 30-point loss basically. And a lot of questions right now for the Lakers and what's going on with this team. Schedule not favorable to them here coming up. So it's kind of like a dicey situation, a little bit precarious right now, it feels like in LA. Adam, what are your thoughts on all this?
I mean, I 100% agree. And 80 points, first of all, anytime a team gets 80 points in today's NBA, you kind of raise an eyebrow. And if you look at the last 6 games, we're talking about this as a 6-game sample here with LeBron struggling. If you look at it, they have a 102.4 offensive rating. That's atrocious. That's like really low for today's NBA. And they're not cracking 100 points or they're getting 101, 102, which again, in today's NBA is pretty low. So you look at that and you think, yeah, there's an issue with the offense. But when we analyze, they're 12-9. They still have a good record because of how hot they started out the gate. But when you look at that Lakers team, you already thought, okay, did they have enough shooting? Do they have enough depth? All these pieces. But what you counted on was that they had 2 superstars, LeBron and Anthony Davis. And it's weird. We always knew the bill would come due. And I'm not saying it has come due for LeBron, but he's not a superstar right now. And you mentioned the lift. It's not just the numbers. When you watch him playing, he doesn't have the explosiveness. He doesn't have the overwhelming athleticism that gives him such a huge advantage. And he had that at the start of the year. So it makes you wonder, was that a thing that he could only do in short bursts? And now he's just hitting a wall. If that's the case, the Lakers, all these other stuff with the Lakers don't matter. They need LeBron and Anthony Davis to be awesome. And right now, LeBron's just not.
I'd like to see how many games in LeBron James' career he's had 6 turnovers and less than 5 assists. I
Ooh,
wanna know,
yeah,
because the reason I say that way is because, look, he's got, those guys that with those kind of usage rates, they have high turnover nights, and a lot of times, though, it's because they're constantly trying to create, and they're just always putting the pressure on you, and sometimes you're gonna throw the ball away a little bit or miss time passes or whatever it may be, because you're constantly dictating terms to the defense. You're gonna turn the ball over sometimes. So on those nights in his career, typically when he's had 6 turnovers, he's probably also going to have 8, 9, 10 or more assists, right?
yeah,
It's not going to be a night like last night where the impact just wasn't there as a scorer or as a playmaker, and sloppy with the ball. So it was, look, LeBron James is not a guy that's going to take the way he's playing lightly and just kind of accept that, oh, okay, I guess I hit some sort of a wall here, and now this is how it'll go, and I'll rethink at the end of the year if I want to keep playing or how long I want to keep
right,
playing. LeBron's not going to do that. Okay, he wants to continue to win. He's going to always push himself. And he was actually kind of questioning himself last night and calling himself out, knowing he has to be better. Question is, can he get there? Like, can he
yeah,
find that gear again? And maybe it's not as good as it was last year or as good as it was earlier this year. I don't know, but it's got to be better than it is right now. And
yeah,
and there's no doubt in my mind it will be. But the question is, for to what level and for how long can he continue to play at that level we just watched, for the last couple of years? And really, you could go back over the last 2 seasons, Adam, and say at any point, that's better than he has any right to be at that age.
right,
So the bar was just set so high because of his physical condition, his productivity. He still had the burst and the explosiveness up the floor with the ball and his ability to finish. We're not seeing that right now during this stretch. It's a
yeah,
6-game stretch. It's not 20 games. So we got to keep it in context here. But at the same time, Lakers are now 12-9. Their season has been wildly inconsistent. Got out of the gate great, hit a losing streak, recovered from that. Now they're back on the schneid again.
yeah.
It's been that kind of year for them. And if LeBron and Anthony Davis are both kind of like scratching their head a little bit about what's going on with this team offensively, that's very concerning.
And just some last numbers for him. 5.2% of his field goal attempts are dunks. That's a career low, unsurprisingly. 28% of his field goal attempts are at the rim. That's also a career low. That's one of the best bellwethers, just to kind of say, how's a guy feeling? If you're not getting to and finishing at the rim, especially with dunks, then that tells you something's going on there. Is there any last thoughts on the Lakers, and their offense and why their offense is struggling? I mean, is it simply as just LeBron is so important to it, or is there other stuff?
No, I think, look, it's an enormous part of it because of the way you have to play their 3-point shooters. If LeBron gets rolling offensively, you have to play their 3-point shooters differently. It gives those guys more time. It gives them an extra half a count when they catch the ball because, you've had to over rotate to LeBron. If he's beating you up like that and having one of those nights where he's physically, overwhelming you, and AD obviously is doing that as well, those guys get better shots. They go 6 for 31 last night. Dalton Connect goes 0 for 5 from the 3. He's critical to them. So they are connected. It's not all that. I think some of it also is, defensively, they're a mediocre defensive team, and that's like in the half court. They're a really poor transition defensive team.
Right.
And what that all means is if you're taking the ball to the net more, it means you're setting up against half court defenses even more. When you're not playing well defensively, now you're playing against stacked half court defenses. And if you're not fresh, your legs are tired, whatever it may be, on top of the fact that you're playing against half-court defenses more often than a lot of teams in this league, that adds up to what you're seing right now. So they barely got to 100 in the OKC game, or they may not even have it. I don't remember the score of that game, but neither team was like close, was right around 100 by the end of the game. So, like you said, Adam, that's 3 quarters. Most teams are getting to 100. Like, that's a lot of teams every night are getting to almost 100. Certainly by 4 minutes into the fourth, teams are at 100 points. They're at 90 for the game, or 80 for the game. So, this is it's just right now a really bad sign. JJ, I think he said he's going to take all day today working with his staff and trying to figure out what is going on with their offense and to get them back on track and figure out what they can do. So this is his first, I think, real test that JJ is going to face as a first-time head coach with no experience. And a lot of people had him under the microscope going in at him. Now okay, this is kind of when we need to figure out how do we get more creative with what we're running with our rotations and what can we do to get this efficiency back in the offense. And look, some of it might not come until LeBron James feels a little bit more energized.
Yeah. Both the Lakers and Warriors started hot. They were one of the stories early, both of them on a bit of a slide. So, and both of them obviously featuring older players that you question their longevity, their ability to play and consistently throughout the season. They're both facing that turmoil right now. If we go to the other side of this game, though, the Timberwolves needed a win and they needed a feel-good moment. They were coming off of a 4-game losing streak before the weekend where they beat the Clippers and the Lakers both in Los Angeles. How about that? I guess both of those games at home as well. So they get a home game with 3 days off. But coming off of their last loss, Anthony Edwards had some really interesting comments here, and I'm going to read them to you. It's a little bit long, but I'm going to read them to you. He said, "We're soft as hell as a team internally. Not to the other team, but internally we're soft. We can't talk to each other. Just a bunch of little kids, everybody, the whole team. We can't talk to each other, and we got to figure it out because we can't go down this road." And then he says, "How many of us is it? All 15. We go into our own shell and we're just growing away from each other. It's obvious. We can see it. I can see it. The team can see it. The coach can see it. The fans can see it. They're booing us, man. It's crazy. They're booing us." I find these comments, he has some other stuff maybe I'll get to here in a second, but I find these comments so interesting about the team growing apart from each other. He had another quote where he said, "We've always been like this, class bands, very, very close group, but this year we're growing away from each other, and it's because we can't talk and call each other out." I find this fascinating for a team that has championship expectations and is coming off of a 4-game win streak, because I feel like Ant has his finger on the pulse here. This is a real challenge in pro sports. How do you stay together? How do you call each other out while being able to stay together? That's a tough balance.
Very tough. I thought the comments were really interesting. And remember, listen, they stood pat in a lot of areas, but they made one massive change. And I didn't know that their chemistry was great last year. Like, I wasn't necessarily watching that team last year and thinking like, oh, especially with the relationship between Cat and Anthony Edwards. Like, I didn't necessarily think there was anything special about that. I didn't think they disliked each other or anything, but I didn't see some great connection. So they make the move and they bring in Randall. And I'm not saying this is Julius Randle's fault at all, but this is Anthony Edwards alluded to the fact that a couple things stood out to me of what he said. First was he basically described a team that is sort of joyless for each other.
Yep.
And that's an interesting comment. And the teams that I played on in my life, not just the NBA, but every level of basketball, the teams that ended didn't necessarily mean it was always the best teams. Like, because winning, you think, oh, well, winning, everybody's happy. That doesn't necessarily be the case. I've played on some teams that were like 500-ish type teams in the NBA, but everybody in that locker room was absolutely selfless in their approach and happy for the guy next to you if they were playing well. Even if it was a guy that played your position, because you had great connection and chemistry, and the coaching staff was a big part of that. So the fact that he said that we don't really have joy for each other and what's going on the court, and like we let go of the rope. And he said when we'll fight, get back in the game, get the lead, then everybody seems to be okay. But as soon as then a run goes the other way, and now we're down again, everybody hangs their head and we go our separate ways. Really interesting comments about what the cohesion is like with this team right now. And it's not something certainly that I'd want to be hearing if I'm Chris Finch or I'm that organization. We talk about team meetings all the time. I think most of them are absolutely useless. There seems to be something that needs to happen with the vocal direction of this team to try to see if we can get everybody on the same page and exhibiting more of that feeling. And I've also believe in this. Sometimes, Adam, if it's not there, it's just organically not there. You might have to figure out a way to fake your way through it until you find it.
Man.
And I hate to say that, but sometimes you do, because what's the alternative? We're just not going to have it. Well, guess you know what that means? Right. That means you're a 500 or sub 500 team that went to the conference finals a year ago with a young superstar on your team. That's not trending in the right direction. Now you start looking at blowing it all up if you're Minnesota. So if you can't fake your way through it and try to like bond a little bit more with the guy sitting next to you in that locker room, it's going to be a long year for Minnesota.
The idea of being excited, like he went on to say, everybody has their own agenda. That's what it feels like. There's their own agenda. The ability for a team to overcome that is so underrated. It's such an important thing. In the NBA,
Totally true.
you have windows of opportunity, but you also have contract windows. And oftentimes those crisscross, right? They don't always line up. So you have guys, and Minnesota's running into this a little bit, especially with their new players, of guys who don't know what their long-term future is and feel like the best thing for them sometimes is not aligned with the best thing for the team. And that makes really tricky dynamics. But when I look around the league right now, Denver is dealing with this to some extent. They have young players trying to make a name for themselves. You know, they have some uncertainty around the team. And so you wonder, are the agendas aligned there? You go around teams like Dallas a little bit, maybe face some of this, but Sacramento, I think, is facing some of this. And then you go to teams like Cleveland, who have been together for several years, and you wondered if it would be stale, but you bring in a new coach and everything is kind of, the team is very aligned right now, or play is very aligned. I just think that part of when you look at the NBA, that part of it's unpredictable because you don't know what the dynamics are going to be in the locker room, but it's extremely important of how much is a team kind of cohesive and playing together. And right now we're seeing Minnesota Timberwolves are 10-10, but they're talented enough to be better than that. But clearly that is something that's weighing on them.
No doubt. And it was look, man, it's not too often that you'll get a young player like Anthony Edwards, regardless of his status in the league, or his pecking order, pull the curtain back like that.
Yeah.
You don't see that very often.
Did. I'm glad he did, though. I like
normally the curtain gets pulled back. It's going to be by a veteran player that's been around a while. That's maybe, that leader in the locker room. And I'm not sure who the leader is there. Maybe it is Anthony Edwards. I'm not sure. But you don't see guys typically that are having that much success early in their career, winning or losing. And actually, it says something, I think, and you and I have talked about this about Anthony Edwards for a while. I think this dude is ultra competitive. I think he desperately wants to win. I think he brings it every night with his energy and demeanor. I think the guy comes to play. And so maybe that's why he had the gumption to do this, because it's not easy for a guy in his early 20s, no matter who you are, to do that, because you got other veteran players on the team. You got your coach. And I wonder if this was all news to them, that the fact that not that it's news to them that there's a chemistry problem. They probably all are aware of that. But the fact that, man, this hit the media, and now this becomes a much bigger deal in Minneapolis because this has been exposed. Now you talk about columnists and beat writers and fans now watching everything related to this team now that this has all come out. So let's see what their response is going to be.
And their response is interesting. Their schedule at the Clippers tomorrow. And then they play Golden State in Golden State twice. It's so weird that they do this. They got the Knicks. They've got Golden State again, this time at home. Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Boston. That takes you all the way through the new year, and all of those games are tough. That was not a single easy game in there. They are all difficult ones. So Minnesota's mettle is about to be tested. They're 10-10. It'll be interesting to see. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, ESPN released a list of the top 25 players under 25. And I was going through the list. I thought, man, I want to hear what Legs' list on this very topic. So we're going to get that on the other side. And then later in the show, we'll get you prepared for a great night in the NBA with the NBA Cup. All that more on the other side. But first, let me tell you guys about the Game Time app. If you guys are looking to buy tickets, or maybe you're thinking about Christmas gifts for some friends and family, hop on the Game Time app right now and check out all of the different deals that they have going on. It's a really nice interface, super easy to use, because you can sort by events, you can sort by dates, you can sort by area of the arena. You go, I want to buy a ticket on this game. Let me just zoom in and look at this portion of it. I like to sit baseline, or I like to sit in this section. You can see all the tickets available, and they have that great feature, the all-in pricing, where you just click on that button and you're not surprised by taxes and fees. It'll go ahead and tell you exactly what your checkout price is going to be while you're scanning through and looking at all the different deals. So you're not surprised. If you're looking for a Christmas gift, it really is a good idea. Say, hey, let's take the family out for an NBA game. You hop on there, you can buy your tickets, and it'll be great. They have last-minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals. It's really easy to find out what's going on. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ALLNBA for $20 off. Remember, very important, let us get credit for this. All NBA. You get $20 off. We get the credit for it. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code ALLNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Also want to tell you about the presenting sponsor today, FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, as I did last night, that my Broncos were going to pull it out, even though they were trailing in the fourth, I just knew they were going to do it. You hop on the app, you place a bet, and you can win. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com/AllNBA. Never waste a hunch and make every moment count with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older and present in Colorado. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. And if you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-522-4700. All right, back here with Tim Legler. Legs, ESPN made a list of the top 25 players under 25. And here is that list in the order that they went through. We'll just kind of start out at the very top. Number 1, Victor Wembanyama. Number 2, Anthony Edwards. And I feel like that first two is pretty easy. I think Wemby, you would have a hard time making a case for somebody other than Wemby. And I think you'd have a hard time making a case for somebody second other than Anthony Edwards. When you looked at that list, do you first of all agree with those two parts?
Yeah, I do. And you want to, there are some guys that make it really interesting after that. And then who knows if some of the guys behind them, you can't tell what a guy's ultimate drive is going to be to add stuff to his game. So maybe 3 years from now, could one of these guys potentially overcome Anthony Edwards? Yeah. I don't know that it would happen with Wembanyama. I mean, I think where Wembanyama's going is he's going to be number 1 for eternity, in this for this group of players.
Yeah,
that's my opinion, unless injury comes into it. But I think there are some guys that still are growing so much with their game that you just don't know what 2 or 3 years down the road look like. So, but for now, as we sit here, yes, I think you'd have to go Wembanyama, Anthony Edwards, 1, 2.
And I think it's pretty clear as well. I wonder if people would ever make the case for Anthony Edwards. I mean, here's the thing: he's 23, Wemby's 20. If you look at just, okay, what has Ant done? He has led his team to a Western Conference Finals already. He had some great regular seasons. Wemby yet to make the playoffs, but nonetheless, he's 20 years old and he's projected. I mean, we got to talk Spurs sometime this week because they are really playing some good basketball. When you get after that, though, it gets interesting. This is ESPN's list. They had Paolo Banchero 3rd, Franz Wagner 4th, Chet Holmgren 5th, Tyrese Halliburton 6th, Tyrese Maxey, Evan Mobley, Jalen Williams, and Alperen Şengün. I look at that, numbers 3 through 10, and I go, man, it's really close between those guys. It almost comes down to preference. So when you look at that, the top 10 that ESPN has, what just kind of stands out to you?
Well, I think that's what you just said. I'll reiterate it. The debate is legitimate for all of those parts. Now, I've got my own personal preferences there near the top, in probably list, 4th or 3 through 6. I feel pretty good about, but it's incredible to me when I really went down the list and I start getting out of some of these names and I'm going, man, this guy's lower than I thought. If you had just asked me the question without seeing all the names in front of me, because right now there's certain level of consciousness about some of these players because whatever, they're on really good teams. They've been talked about a lot for whatever reason. But when you really start to now see the whole list in front of you, and it's like now it's almost like you're going to a bakery and they're all there behind the glass and you can pick out what you want. Now it gets a lot harder to choose because there are different criteria that I would use. So I think that's what stands out to me, just how close these guys are, and a lot closer in my mind, again, before people, have an aneurysm on this kind of stuff. It's his opinions.
Yeah. It's supposed to be fun. Yeah.
As long as you have a point of view that makes sense, you're not wrong. All right. Yeah, so here we go. That's where I'll leave it. But I think it's a lot of great debate that can take place, certainly in the rest of that top 10.
Well, let's debate this part first, because I think Paolo Banchero versus Franz Wagner is such an interesting one that frames how you look at this list. Because to me, Franz Wagner impacts winning more right now than Paolo Banchero does. They're both phenomenal players. When you start doing this, you start splitting hairs about like, oh, you're saying this guy's not good. He doesn't impact winning. No, I'm saying comparing those two guys who in the list were 3 and 4, I think Franz right now impacts winning better. Paolo Banchero clearly fits the superstar mold more and probably has more upside, because he's young and he's able to score. He's so physically dominant with the stuff he does. So how you project those two going forward, meaning like what do I think is going to happen with these two, I feel reveals a lot about how you view the game. So when you look at that, did you like the order they had? Paolo Banchero 3, Franz 4? Like, how do you compare those two?
Yeah, I absolutely did. And I'm going to tell you something. For me, I think it's a clear leader between the two of those players. And in fact, I actually wrote down on my list getting ready for this conversation, clear number 1, Wemby. And I wrote on the second line, one guy with a slash and then the other guy's name, meaning 2, 3, interchangeable depending on your argument. And that's Paolo Banchero.
Yeah.
So Paolo Banchero to me is a absolute stud star. He's also been really good in like under pressure with some of the stuff he does late in games. I just don't think that guy's got a hole in his game at all. Now, this is his first, I guess, having to deal with this kind of an injury. We'll see when he comes back. I don't think it'll be a problem. And Wagner, look, would Wagner have been in your top 4 prior to Banchero's injury? I'm curious.
I mean, I'm so high on Franz Wagner. You have to understand something. Like I've been really high on him. So maybe he would have but only by virtue of that list. Like I said, there's no separation. I wouldn't be offended by any order, but to your point, this run that they're on 12 out of 13 games without Paolo, that obviously really confirms how I feel about Paolo, that he like really affects winning. Or I'm sorry, about Franz. He really affects winning.
No. So I hear what you're saying. I think if you had, you'd asked me this exact same question before the season, I don't think Franz Wagner's in the top 5. I think he's probably more like top 10 is where you'd be for me personally. But now he absolutely is in this conversation to get into the top 5. But I didn't like hesitate a long time thinking Franz or Paolo. For me, it's Banchero. So again, Wemby and then Ant and Banchero, 2, 3. I'm cool. If anybody wants to make a really strong argument that Banchero's 2, I'm okay with that. So I think 1 through 3 for me, pretty set, and I'm cool with the 2 and 3 being interchangeable.
So after that, it gets really interesting too. Yeah. First of all, was there anybody outside the top 10 of ESPN's list that made it into your top 5?
Well, let me see. That made it into the top 5.
Scotty Barnes, LaMelo.
There's one guy I'm looking for. I don't know where they put him. Oh, he was 9th.
Yeah.
Because I think Jalen Williams has a legitimate argument for top 5.
I agree too. I mean,
and he was 9th. I put him 5th.
Okay. So who was your 4th?
Franz Wagner.
Franz Wagner then comes in 4th. J-Dub.
So I had Wagner. Wagner jumped all the way to 4. And he, look, he's a very athletic guy. He defends too, but he's a great playmaker. So Wagner to me, and Jalen Williams fits that category as well, But look, here's the thing. Like you're seeing right now what Franz Wagner is capable of doing as your number 1 guy on a team with expectations, and you lose your best player, and Franz Wagner they haven't missed a beat. He's just okay, that's what we need to do. I'm going to level it up here. And so Jalen Williams, I love him. He does have Shea there pretty much every night, getting 30. And so he's very much in that, 1A role for Oklahoma City. Who knows what he could be if he did have a team of his own, what he could be. But I love him so much. And I got to see him the other night, and it just it reiterates it. It reinforces it, what I'm watching. He's so good defensively. His arms are so long. His feet are so quick. Yeah. He's developed into a really tough mid-range jump shooter. I just love his demeanor on the court. He's all business, but he's having fun at the same time. So that's why for me, I jumped Jalen Williams all the way up to 5, and ESPN had him at 9. Who was your 5th?
So my list is actually different than yours. I have Wemby 1, Ant 2, so we're same there. I had J-Dub 3rd on this list.
Okay.
So I had him even higher than you, and for the same reason. He can defend really well. He's a smart player. They used him at center for a good stretch there before Hartenstein came back, and he held his own. He did a good job. He's physically big enough to be able to do that. He passes well. He scores from the perimeter well. He draws fouls well. He shoots the three well. He just does a lot well. I honestly think that he is as good as any of these guys, in part because of his versatility. Number 4, I went with Chet on this one. This shows you how high I am on OKC. The Chet one, I think Chet would have been third in most people's list if he didn't get hurt. The fact that he's already missed a whole year and is missing majority of a second year already, I think you have to start to factor those things in. But if you just talk about impacting winning, a 3-point shooter who's one of the best shot blockers in the NBA, that alone makes him incredibly valuable. And the fact that he has all this other stuff. So I had him 4. And then I went with Şengün at 5. I had Paolo outside of my top 5 list. This shows you I love Paolo, but I'm a little bit lower on that mold of player.
Wow.
But
that's a pretty strong take, man. You putting Franz you have him that much higher than Banchero. That's surprising.
I had Şengün and then Paolo. So Franz is right after that as well. So
wait, go over it again. You've disagreed. I thought you said Wagner you were taking over Banchero, which meant
Wemby, Ant, J-Dub, Chet, and then Şengün is how I worked on the list.
Gotcha,
so I know Magic fans are going to hate that one.
We both had Jalen Williams in our top 5.
Yeah.
I had, Banchero and Franz Wagner both in there with Anthony Edwards and Wembanyama. So they made up my top 5. It's interesting. I had Şengün 6th.
Yeah.
So I didn't have Chet yet. And it's pretty for one very obvious reason to me. Chet Holmgren, look, he was off to a great start too. And he actually started to cool off a little bit. He kind of came back to like normal before the injury.
Yeah.
But now, he's been hurt a couple of times here early in his career. That didn't really even weigh into it as much for me either. It comes down to this. Like, I'm picturing all these guys. I'm picturing like as your best player, if that's ever the case. You can't run an offense through Chet Holmgren.
Yeah.
You can run an offense through Alperen Şengün. And to me, I understand Chet's a better defender. I get that. Chet Holmgren is going to have limitations offensively that he's going to have his entire career. Chet Holmgren is never going to be a guy that you can run an offense through with his back to the basket in a post. He's not going to be a guy that's going to handle the ball a ton. I give him credit because he took a huge leap this year with his aggressiveness on the straight line dribble drive on swing passes. I thought last year he either took the 3 or if it was a little bit crowded, he'd run immediately to a dribble handoff. And he was super efficient. He only took shots he could make. He could clearly make threes. And he's a great defender. Don't get me wrong. That's a massive thing. But you can't really run things offensively where like that's your primary option. And now let's see what we can get out of that. Şengün, you can. So that's for me why I had Şengün 6th. I put Chet 7th. And that's where my
counterpoint to that, because I agree with all of those points, but a counterpoint to that is that I think Chet can fit in around whoever you build your offense around very easily. Whereas I think Şengün is going to have certain types of players he doesn't mold with, he doesn't fit with. So I think that for that reason, I would have Chet, I have Chet one spot ahead of him, but nonetheless, I put both of them in my top 5. Look, I have big man bias. I'm not going to lie. You know this. I always lean a little bit more towards the big men. So I got 2 big men there. Evan Mobley is an interesting one because ESPN had him 8th. And he's another guy that I feel like he's hard to place here. When you get down to after the guys we didn't mention, Halliburton, Maxey, Mobley, Scotty Barnes, LaMelo, Cade, is there a guy on there that you just kind of feel like I have him a little bit higher than ESPN did?
I would put LaMelo Ball like up there, man. Like
I
next.
love your love from LaMelo. I love it.
No, man. Look, I understand he's not everybody's cup of tea. Certainly wasn't mine. I had major problems with the whole thing. When they hit the NBA, I was like, oh my goodness. But the bottom line is, I mean, this is one of the most offensively gifted players in the league. Now, he's got some maturity issues, and there's some of the things he does I laugh about because I think it's like unnecessary showmanship. But I also think he takes it as, hey, I'm an entertainer too. And his team hasn't been relevant. I get that. I just think you could put players around him, I believe, and he could adjust to who he's playing with. If you had veteran guys that have been somewhere and the expectations were to win right now, I do believe LaMelo Ball could adapt his game and cut out some of that, showboating that he does, and some of the stuff that's just all flair and no substance. I think he could cut that down, Adam, and be a guy that's so skilled and talented offensively with his passing ability, his ability to break down defenses. I think if he was on a better team with better players around him, I do think he could make that adjustment. So I'm enamored with his skill. I'll be the first to admit it. Some of these other
This
guys
feels crazy.
that we're going to get into next, I'm kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
what ultimately is their skill upside?
Yeah.
Mobley would be in that category. Like, how
Right.
much better is Evan Mobley going to be 3
Yeah.
years from now? LaMelo Ball is so good now. The only question is he ever going to be on a team that's like relevant? And then I think a lot of people would start to probably sing his praises.
Scotty Barnes is an interesting one because I think he is the type of player that is a bad superstar, but going to be an elite, like better than role player, in between star and role players, where he's going to find an Aaron Gordon type. And when he's billed as a superstar, he's going to underperform, in my opinion. But at some point, he'll find himself in the right role. Darius Garland came in at 14, which is interesting, having a great year. Brandon Miller at 15, he's a great player as well. 16 is Zion Williamson, who's probably the most interesting name on this list. I'm guessing when they did this list 2 years ago, he was number 2 or 3. And here we have him down at 16 legs. And to be honest, I can't tell if that's too low or too high.
I'm thinking for me, it's too high. I'm sorry, man. It's
You're just out. You're just out.
You're asking me to get some sort of a lobotomy to like act like I don't know what the history is here. Like, how am I supposed to buy into that, man? Like seriously, like at what point do you start to sound foolish even selling that?
Yeah.
Like, you're knocking on doors selling that? Like, come on, man. At some point, you got that taste of it last year, like that incredible game he had to finish his season against the Lakers. And everybody, like even in the broadcast, was like, oh man, this is like the coming out party for Zion Williamson. He got hurt in that game. Like it wasn't even like
that's right.
Okay.
It was at the end of the game. You're right.
It wasn't even like, okay, coming out party off season. Can't wait till October gets here because Zion had a breakthrough. He got hurt in the game. That was his signature game. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And now already hurt again this year. His team is like an absolute train wreck. One of the biggest underachieving teams in the league based on the talent on their roster going into the season. So I'm sorry. No, I think it's too high for me. Like here's how bad it's gotten. I never even considered him.
Yeah.
And I've got 15 names written down.
Yeah.
And I did not consider him for the top 15 for me.
Kind of a tragedy, to be honest, man, the Zion story, because he's so talented and the league would be better if he was up to his potential. After that, you go Jalen Johnson, Jalen Suggs. The Magic have 3 players in the top 18, which is, pretty exciting. Derek Lively, 19, Jalen Green, 20, Tyler Hero, 21, Amin Thompson, 22, Dyson Daniels, 23, Tari Eason, 24, and Bilal Coulibaly comes in at 25. Some really good names on that list, man. And the Rockets have a bunch of youngsters. The Magic have a bunch of youngsters. Those 2 teams should be pretty excited, the fact that they have so many names on this list.
All right, so a lot of great names there, man. And it'd be fun actually just giving our thoughts on each of these guys. In looking at the next sort of set of names on my list after I get with Şengün and Chet and LaMelo, to me, that next group, you got Maxey.
Yeah.
You got Mobley, Scotty Barnes, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Johnson, Suggs, and Halliburton. Now, Halliburton to me is one I want to talk about now because where would you have put Tyrese Halliburton on this list, Adam, after last season?
I was thinking about this before as I was making my list, and I thought he could be as high as 3rd. Honestly, if at his absolute peak of where he was last year, he might have come in at 3rd.
You're probably right. Certainly top 5.
Yeah.
And I had him down here at 14th. And here's why, man. I'm watching him a lot this year, and I'm starting to get concerned that number one, he is a defensive liability. It's not even like the guy's not a great defender. He's a liability defensively. So let's just start from you're not going to get much impact at all on that end. And a lot of these guys we mentioned, you are going to get that impact on that end. Some at a higher degree than others. Some of the guys we mentioned, like obviously a guy like Wemby, I think Jalen Williams, they fall into that category. Like even Anthony Edwards, like those guys impact the game on that end every night, even if they don't have great offensive nights. So for Halliburton, it really strictly comes down to what is your dominance offensively? How are you dictating pace for the entire game? How are you that dual threat of playmaking and scoring? And he's had half of his games this year, half of his games have been below middle of the pack point guard play in this league.
Yeah.
Half your games. This isn't like he had a rough 4-game road trip. I'm talking about it's impossible to predict right now what you're going to get out of Tyrese Halliburton offensively. Now, part of it, I'll take off of his plate and say, part of it is they don't look the same as a team either. Like collectively, they're not, their pace is different. They're playing too many possessions. They're not hard to defend. I thought they were the hardest team in the league to guard last year for a long stretch of the season. They don't look like that anymore. And maybe look, if I was in there every day, I would know, is this the chicken or the egg? Is it Halliburton? And that's why? Or is it a combination of things and it's affecting Halliburton too? It's hard to tell. All I know is that's not the same guy. That is not the same player that we watched last year and had that ascension in the middle of the season. For the most part, maintain that the rest of the year. So I dropped him all the way down on this list of 14th, barely ahead of Jalen Suggs. And I think his offense is significantly better than Suggs right now. It'd be tough for me to say, okay, let's put Suggs ahead of him. But I think it's debatable now because Suggs is the best defenders in the league and his offense has come a long way.
I also think Suggs is just a great leader. I mean, I watched that. The vibe around that Magic team is just so fun to watch. And I think he's a big part of it. He's always at the center of everybody, hyping everybody up. I just love it. And then the back end of this, it's interesting to see who climbs over time, because it does feel like this is right now rather than projecting forward, because you have guys like Jalen Green, which we don't know if he's going to break up or down. Amin Thompson is on a rise right now. He's a guy I could see climbing this list, but right now 22 feels right. Tari Eason, same thing. And then Bilal Coulibaly is kind of having a little breakout this year. And I'm curious, he's another guy that I could see climbing. He's appropriately positioned right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do this next year and he's 10 spots higher.
All right, let me ask you a question. If you picked one or two guys that are in the 16 to 25 range on ESPN's list, do you think, just if you had to just take a flyer on one of these guys and take the long bet on, say, hey, man, this guy 2-3 years from now, he might have cracked the top 5 of this list of names? Are there a couple guys that tantalize you a little bit more than others?
The top 5 is tough because now you're projecting star. Like Jalen Suggs is a guy I think is going to be phenomenal, but I don't think he'll ever be top 5 because I don't know if he's a star.
All right, 16 to 25 that could get top 10.
Top 10. Jalen Johnson's been great. Yeah. Lively is a guy I think has untapped potential.
For me was the guy I was thinking. That's why I kind of led you into that. Jalen Johnson was the exact guy I was thinking of.
He's really good, man. I mean, he's a double-double guy, almost triple-double. Doesn't really get the 10 assists too often, but he's in the mix.
By the way, I got a question for you. Like, who do you know at ESPN that they're like taking your input?
Hey, man, that's not how this works. Hold up a second.
Wait a second. I'm looking here at the sort of bottom of their top 25.
Pretty impressive.
What do these guys have in common? Tari Eason.
My guy.
Dyson Daniels.
My guy.
Amin Thompson.
My guy, man. I'm telling you, I should be a scout.
Oh, but wait a second. Jalen Green too.
Well, ESPN has a couple misses as well.
Oh, you like Lively too. Lively, I think, is kind of one of your guys. I don't know about the Lively one, man. Like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't know. Like, I really like Derek Lively, but how much better do you really think Derek Lively is going to be in 3 years?
See, that to me, it's an interesting question because I think he has some more to his game that they don't tap into very much. And I think smartly by design, like you don't need to develop an offensive fulcrum out of your center when you have Luka Doncic on the court. So, but I think he has a little bit more, and I'm so curious to see if he's more because I think he play makes pretty decently 4-on-3 that role. And now you make a decision.
I got news for you. Okay, if Derek Lively spends the majority of his career in Dallas, ain't never going to happen.
I know that, and that's the part with him. I do think it's something there, but they don't need it.
He's relegated to a lob threat. I mean, that's what he's going to be forever. If he plays with Luka Doncic, Luka's got the ball the entire game. And if he and Kyrie stay paired up for the next 4 or 5 years, then where are Lively's opportunities? It's either offensive glass or lob dunk, and that is basically it, and splits time with another center. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Like, I don't know what would look a lot different numbers-wise, opportunity-wise, unless he changes teams. Now, look, if he ends up somewhere else in 4 years, in a team that needed a center, and he plays with a team that the ball moves a bit more and he gets to expand his game, it can make an elbow jumper
Yeah.
because that team allows him to do that. Okay, but I'm just picturing him in a Dallas uniform. There are ceilings in place for him as long as he's playing with Luka Doncic.
Yeah. See, I see the Lively as Rudy Gobert, and I'm telling you, I just don't see it. I think he has a little bit more versatility to his offensive game, but again, in Dallas, they do use him like he's Gobert. So,
By the way, can I mention one that wasn't on the list that I saw
yeah.
someone write down and I kind of agree with? So I want to point this out.
Okay.
Somebody I really, really like, but there's just not enough there yet in terms of production or whatever else. And Stephon Castle. I
Yeah.
really like Stephon Castle. So
The young
I
guys can
can't
crack
wait
into this.
to see what that is in a couple of years.
Yeah, the guys that were drafted this year are the guys that can crack into the list. We just don't know yet. We don't know which guys are going to break, to make this list. So
Cooper
I
Flag,
like
by the way, has a chance to get into this list pretty quickly.
not even on the league yet, but he's already on the list. Let's move on now because I want to preview the NBA Cup tonight. This is where it all culminates. This is where everything kind of comes together. The last night of the NBA Cup, and then you'll have your teams that advance. Right off the top, here's who's in already, Legs. The Warriors, the Rockets, and the Hawks already punched their ticket. 8 teams are going to punch their ticket total. Those 3, Warriors, Rockets, and Hawks. And what I love about this is Rockets and Hawks, those are young teams that it's cool to see them elevated on the stage because, all right, I don't know how often they're going to be center stage of the NBA, and they're already there. Tonight, there are 5 teams who can punch their ticket just by winning. It's the Bucks at the Pistons. Both of those teams right now, if you look at this, Bucks at Pistons, whichever team wins that one is in. The Magic at the Knicks, whichever team wins that one is in. And then the Spurs, if they get a win at Phoenix, they can punch their ticket, which again would be really cool. San Antonio, I don't know how much we're going to be talking about them in April, May, although you never know. But it would be cool for them to take center stage. And then, of course, Orlando and the Knicks, that's a good one. The Bucks, the Pistons, another team that this is their season. It could come down to just the Pistons win, and now they get to be center stage. So I like that. First of all, look at these 2 games, Legs. I like that it comes down to whoever wins tonight and these four teams.
Okay, I do want to make a point, and I think I got this right. This stuff's pretty confusing, but am I missing something here, Adam? Stay with me for a second. You talked about the Orlando New York game, okay? So winner in because they're 4-0 in their group, right? If the Magic lose, they've got a differential right now of plus 60.
Yep.
When you look at the rest of the teams involved, like Milwaukee, Detroit, they play.
Yeah.
They're both plus 29, plus 28.
Yeah.
So they'd have to one of those teams would have to blow the other one out. And Orlando lose by a decent amount to not make it. So I almost feel like Orlando's in either way. Because let's just say it's a close game tonight and Orlando loses, then the Knicks are in. There's your 4th team. And then let's say right now they're a plus 60. Let's say their point differential at that point is a plus 54. Yeah. Well, then one of those 2 teams would have to blow the other one out. So I think the Milwaukee-Detroit game. Am I wrong about that?
Nope, you're right. So what it is if Orlando wins, they're in because they go 4-0.
Right.
If they lose, they can lose by, I believe, 32 points.
There you go. So they're in 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it. They're in 2. And if the Knicks lose, then it gets dicey for them because the point differential for Milwaukee and Detroit is significantly better. If those 2 teams play a close game and the Knicks lose, they're out.
Well, not only that, you also have the Celtics who do not play tonight. They've already completed their cup prelims. They're at plus 23. The Knicks are plus 15. So if the Knicks lose tonight, they're going to lose the tiebreaker with
they're
Boston.
Out. They're out.
So they're
Orlando,
out.
I'm going to call it right now. Orlando's in.
Orlando's
because as long as they don't get smoked by the Knicks, Orlando's going to make it, win or lose. So that would be, if they win, it's 4 teams, and then we got to find the other 4. But if they lose the game, I think Knicks and Orlando are both in.
What I like about this, though, is the game of the night then becomes Detroit-Milwaukee. That would not have been the game of the night typically, but you look at it and say it's very likely that only one of those teams is getting in. And, it could be either one. For Milwaukee, they had a horrible start to the year. Their record in general, they need to get the win just for the regular season. But what better way for you to kind of reverse the script on your schedule than you get into this tournament and you win it? It's like, all right, yeah, they started 2-9 or whatever, but then they went on a run. They won the cup. The season almost resets for them. And then if you're Detroit, you had the worst losing streak in the history of the NBA last year. An NBA Cup berth is, for them, those are the types of wins you're looking for. So that game, to me, becomes the game of the night.
That's it. I'm going to call it right now. So that's what we got. We're going to end up with, where is that game being played?
I think it is in Detroit. I had it written down here. Yes, in Detroit.
All right, I'm going to go with the Bucks. The veteran,
Okay.
the veteran dominance of Antetokounmpo getting that game. They win. So it'll be them, Atlanta, and then I think Orlando.
Does Orlando beat the Knicks tonight? Does Orlando beat?
I think the Knicks win the game, and Knicks and Orlando get in to join Milwaukee and Atlanta.
Okay, there you go. If the Knicks win, I think they have to win by like 15, though. That's or 8 or so. About 8 points they're gonna have to win by, which is kind of interesting. So that'll be fun to watch.
They'll be 4-0 though.
Oh, if the Knicks win, you're right. I'm sorry, you're right. Correct.
Yeah, they'll be
right.
4-0. They can win by 1 point, and they're good.
All right. So Knicks, you have Knicks, Bucks, Hawks, and then Magic are the wild card. That seems reasonable. If we go to the other side of this, it gets really interesting because the Spurs, who are at the moment 2-1 in group play, along with the Thunder and the Suns. The Spurs play the Suns tonight, and they beat the Thunder in group play. So if the Spurs beat Phoenix tonight in Phoenix, the Spurs will punch their ticket. Now, you wouldn't predict that to happen tonight. I think you would take the Suns to win at home. But nonetheless, it'd be a fun night for Wemby to go off, be on the big stage. You go off, you punch your ticket, and he would be the storyline, I feel, of the cup would be, okay, here's the Spurs. Wemby, he's in his first elimination sort of series. So that one's fun tonight. Any chance you think they beat the Suns tonight?
Yeah, definitely. I think the Suns have lost 6 out of 7 without Durant. So they're not exactly playing very well right now. So yeah, and San Antonio's been, I think, one of the stories of the league. Honestly, I didn't think that team was going to have a significant leap in terms of wins, despite Wemby. Like the Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes additions didn't do a lot for me in terms of looking at the big picture with their team, but I think there has been an impact there. Stephon Castle has been great. He's getting there quicker than you thought. They got their guys back, so they've got scoring off the bench now with 2 guys that were starting a year ago with Keldon Johnson and Vassell. Those guys are now coming off the bench. They're giving you 30 a game off the bench, basically, between the 2 of them. And Wembanyama's been fantastic. So for San Antonio to sit here and be a couple games over 500, basically 6 weeks into the season is I'm very surprised by that.
Yeah. I think the team that's most likely to be the wild card is the Dallas Mavericks. Tonight, the Mavericks are playing the Grizzlies, which is a tough, that's an important game. They're going to have to win that one to get in. If they lose that one, all bets are off. But if they win it, they'll go to 3-1 and they have a plus 41 differential, which is far ahead of everybody else. So that game also takes on special significance tonight. Dallas at Memphis. That game is another one. I think Spurs, Suns, Detroit, Milwaukee, and then that one, the Mavs and Grizzlies. Those are all 3 phenomenal games that have huge implications.
All right, I'm going to call it right now. Your 4 teams from the West are going to be Houston, San Antonio, Golden State, and Dallas.
So you're predicting San Antonio wins tonight over Phoenix?
Houston, San Antonio, Golden State, and Dallas. There's your 4 Western Conference. What else you need to know?
That's what I wanted to know, man. I wanted to know it. That would be great, though. I mean, even if you look at it, like I said, the Rockets, even the Warriors are fun to be in there. Dallas, it's fun to be in there. And if you get a Spurs and a Pistons, the Magic, there's a handful of the Hawks. There's a handful of teams that makes this cup fun because it's really big deal to those teams. It puts them on the stage. I'm excited for it. I don't always love the cup. There's parts of it that really annoy me. But when we get to this part, the elimination part, then it gets really fun. And it makes for a random Tuesday to have some really good games in the association. I don't think we had any super chats today. Do we have any, James? There's no super chats. All right, let's go ahead and hit that outro music. We are off tomorrow. But when we come back on Thursday, we will be breaking down, previewing the cup, as well as a handful of very interesting games coming up on Wednesday. If you're new to the show, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're doing this 4 times a week. We will be back Thursday and Friday this week. We appreciate you tuning in. Everybody, hit that like button on the way out.
All silly like like the mayor.